Welcome to the Accelerate Campfire. I'm Lyndon Bowen, and today I'm joined by an amazing entrepreneur. I truly hope you enjoy hearing their experiences and life path. Listen in. Our guest today is Andrea Perdomo. She's an entrepreneur and the economic director of the Inequality Initiative at Uncharted, a social impact accelerator. At Uncharted, Andrea supports early stage solutions for startups addressing economic inequality in the United States, as well as the entrepreneurs that lead those ventures. Andrea is also an entrepreneur herself. In 2013, she co-founded Revlar, a 2015/2016 Techstars accelerator company, leveraging technology for the good to keep her and our loved ones safe. While at Revlar, Andrea and her co-founder built a diverse and inclusive remote team that launched two hardware products and sold over 20,000 units in just 16 months. They fundraised millions and were named one of the first 15 Latinas to raise over $1 million dollars from venture capital. Let's please give a warm welcome to Andrea here today.
I feel like we need some clapping or cheering. Woohoo!
Well, they're clapping in the chat, all these gifts, and
Oh,
you can't
good.
see it.
Awesome. Yay. So excited to be here with you all.
Well, they are super excited, so everyone's sending gifts in the chat right now. So people are excited to have you here, Andrea.
Well, I'm very, very excited to
Yeah,
be here, and to be here with you, Lyndon. I know we
yeah,
connected a few years ago, so it's great to be back here and having an awesome conversation that hopefully inspires a lot of people today.
yeah. I'm super excited. What were you doing before you set out to be an entrepreneur? Like, could you give us a little bit of a background to your journey to becoming an entrepreneur?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Where to start? It's interesting, right? Because so many people will will consider you an entrepreneur once you've actually started a company and put your name on it.
Mhm,
But I actually think there's so many qualities that come with being an entrepreneur that I developed much earlier than that.
mhm.
So just to give you like a perfect example, and this is um little earlier in my childhood, but when I moved to the US, immigrated here, one of it was at a I was in elementary school, I believe, and I started this is my earliest entrepreneur
Uh,
experience. But as a child in elementary school, I started charging $1 on the playground, for people to let me draw hand tattoos on them with gel pens.
like henna kind of.
And
Yeah.
right, it was it was a little bit of that hustle of like,
Yeah.
I have all these gel pens, what can I do? And like I can draw hearts, that's really easy. And so that's why I say like it kind of goes further back. I think it requires a lot of creativity, a lot of like not being scared to be told no or being suspended, which I did. Um and so
I
so
got
that's
suspended for drawing henna tattoos on the good
I
background
was
though.
it was not yeah, very frowned upon, I would say. But anyways, nonetheless, like that's just something that I remember from my early childhood is just like kind of always thinking creatively of what can I make? Like what will people buy? Both my parents were entrepreneurs as well, so I think that's a little bit of where I get it from. But more specifically, I guess like to my journey, I originally I graduated from University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. I truthfully
For
and
real.
I think it's great. Yeah, go heels. Um, there is something about, especially at that age, being told that you have to know exactly what you want to do and by when and what's your major and all that stuff. I wanted to be an art major. Both my parents were also architects, and so I wanted to go into art and design. I got into Chapel Hill and to my oblivious 18-year-old me, accepted that right away because it's such a great school, but didn't look at the majors.
Mm.
Turns out there's no art school at Chapel Hill. So
Yeah, I
I
was
went
just
with
thinking that. I was like,
there
there's nothing
isn't.
over there.
Yeah, nope. So I went with a business degree instead. I was like, well, everyone can, I could use business at some point. And so that's kind of, weirdly enough, right, how decisions were made that kind of led me a little bit closer to where I am now. So I did that. I originally actually thought I was gonna work in the fashion industry,
Mhm.
doing brand management. I studied abroad in Milan for over a year. Really thought that was gonna be my thing. Um, Very quickly, however, I started to realize that that industry in and of itself, while it's fantastic and, I love it, love the art aspect of it and just the individual expression that comes with fashion. But the more I started to look underneath it all, I found a lot of inequalities as it related to access. Um, Lots of impact on climate, just with like how wasteful that industry is. I was also working at a retail store, and so there was just a lot of waste that was happening. And I very quickly, even at that early age, started to think about why am I doing this? If I'm gonna do it, if I'm gonna work, right, as we all have to, if I'm gonna work for the next 40 plus years of my life, I might as well do something in this world that makes this world better and not worse. And so it took me about 6 months to realize that right out of college, and I very quickly left my corporate job in the fashion industry to work for a startup instead. um, I took an unpaid internship in Denver, Colorado, which I had never been to before. I just drove out here out of the blue. Um, Working for a startup that was kind of a combination of all the things that I thought I wanted to do. It was fashion in the sense that we were taking handmade artisan product from around the world, selling it, and then turning around and doing 20% proceeds to a nonprofit of each country. So this was all before Tom's even
Yep.
existed.
Synthetic.
And it was a startup, right? Like, it was
Yep.
me and the founder, and yes, it was unpaid, but, like, I loved the thrill of it. So that's kinda how I got into entrepreneurship.
Mhm.
Like, at least I got my foot in the door,
Right.
was that. And I think a big piece of that journey is, and I talk about this quite a bit, it's when I look back, or actually when I think about all the different paths that I could have gone on and all the choices that I made to get to where I am now. It's so easy to think that they don't connect, but when you
Mhm.
look back, they actually in fact do connect, and it's
Right.
it's pretty magical when you start to
Yeah.
look at that.
In hindsight.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
What was the transition for you? Like we talked about, you founding Revelar. We talked about, your journey starting off, at a startup yourself to moving to, building your own startup to now working for a economic inequality initiative.
Mm.
What was that like? Why did you decide to make the transition from being an entrepreneur to moving to more of a support role for other entrepreneurs?
Yeah, yeah, it's a good question. I can maybe dive into a little bit of just the entrepreneur, once I actually started my own company, like what
Yeah,
that was like.
yeah, sure.
Um, yeah, so I co-founded an organization called Revelar. We were creating personal safety devices so that at the touch of a button, you could let your friends and family know exactly where you are and that you needed help. The original inspiration was my co founder's little sister, who was actually sexually assaulted twice before the age of 17. So it was originally her idea, and I stepped in to kind of help support, and then very quickly turned into a co founder. Um, my inspiration was definitely through my own lived experience as an immigrant to the US, and part of the reason why we moved here was because of safety and security reasons.
Okay,
My grandmother was actually kidnapped, she's fine. But it was, both very separate, very different circumstances in which, both my co-founder Jackie and I kept saying if our loved ones had just had a magic button, everything could have
right.
been different. And so we started that organization, that company together. Um, Ran that for about 5 years, like you mentioned earlier, right? We grew our team, we got VC funding, we did all of that. Um, part of part of that journey was also looking at the inequalities that exist in the entrepreneurship world head on. Um, Part of that is one, like having equitable access to capital. We had a very, very hard time fundraising. We had great investors that believed in what we did, which was great, and they supported us throughout throughout all of our journey. But there did come a moment where no one else wanted to take a risk on us, right? Whether it was because we were first time founders or, um, a lot of the untold narratives of you're just too Latinas, you're young, you've never done this before. Whether or not all of that was true, it felt true in the moment. There was also just, access to customers and network that we didn't have. I think Techstars definitely opened up a ton of doors for us. We did 2 programs with them, and we found a network that we didn't even know was possible that supported us along the way. But it was looking at all of those inequities that existed within entrepreneurship, specifically in tech, that once we were able to sell that company back in 2018, um, I made a very intentional decision to change that, or to try to, right? And so a big piece of that was working at Techstars, very shortly after I had left this company that we started to actually build out a lot of the diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives focused on just creating more access for underrepresented entrepreneurs into not just Techstars, but just into the entrepreneurial ecosystem as a whole. And I did that for about 3 years, and now, like you were just saying, Lyndon, now I'm running my own program that's even I took that a little step further,
Yeah.
and still supporting entrepreneurs. All of my entrepreneurs in the cohort are underrepresented, which is great, so they're all women or people of color.
Yeah.
And on top of that, they're also solving the systemic issues that have kind of put us where we are today, which is around economic inequality and really closing the wealth gap in this country, which entrepreneurship is directly tied to. And so, um, it's really rewarding work. And again, it was my own lived experience as an entrepreneur facing a lot of these discriminations and what I would call transparent walls is what I've always called them, like
Transparent
walls where
walls.
I could see
Yeah.
right through it. I was like, I know exactly how to get funding,
Yeah.
or I know exactly how to get talent, or I know exactly how to get customers, but we couldn't get through those walls. Like there was something else there that was blocking us. And so um that's really what's driven me now is how do we shatter those, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
how do we really create equity across the entrepreneurial ecosystem and support the entrepreneurs that are often overlooked and under-resourced and underfunded? Those are the entrepreneurs that I want to take a bet on.
Yeah. I mean, I think that something that you said is really interesting that resonated with me. You talked about transparent walls.
Mm.
Um, how many of those walls, like, were individuals or people that instilled doubt in you when you were chasing, your goal, like with Revelar, or chasing your goal with the current initiative that you run now? Like, how did you get past those transparent walls or break through those transparent walls?
Yeah. I just chose to prove all those people wrong. Um, That's always kind of been my motto. Maybe that's, it's a little cheesy for lack of a better word. But we did encounter a lot of different individuals and a lot
Mhm.
of, you know, aggressions that we couldn't quite explain all the time. Keep in mind too, we're also starting a company fighting against sexual assault, and this was all before the Me Too movement happened. So we were also facing that backlash of the two of you are crazy and this isn't an issue. This doesn't happen. Women are
Mm.
fine. Like,
Yep.
go start something else. Can your technology be used for something different?
Mm.
Um, and so it was definitely an uphill journey. And truthfully, all of those moments um were actually, I know this sounds kind of strange, but they were huge motivators, like I said earlier, to prove those people wrong. To prove that like two Latinas could go fundraise and create a successful business. Um, to prove that we could build a diverse team, right? That we we could have women engineers, we could
Yeah.
have leaders from across different sectors of different ages, that we could have and hire people from the LGBTQ plus community. Like we just kind of set out to prove a lot of those individuals wrong. Um, did we prove them all wrong? I don't know, right? Like everyone will always kind of have their own
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah.
Um, but I do like to think like that things have improved since we started our company,
Yeah.
especially as it relates to just democratizing access to entrepreneurship. There's a lot more support and communities that exist today than there were back in 2015.
Mhm.
So it gives me hope that things are changing. Um, but yeah, like we personally used it as a huge motivator to kind of
Fuel
keep
for your fire,
going.
right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, well, you don't think we can do this? I'm gonna show you that we can. And so it was definitely inspirational. Not to mention exhausting. So I do want to put in that caveat in there. Like it is exhausting, both mentally and physically draining.
Right.
And we can talk about mental health if we want to.
It's the subject.
Another subject, we could probably chat about that for hours. So it definitely there was a cost associated with that,
Yeah. Yeah.
both personally and for our team. Um, but I like to think that hopefully we paved the way for other entrepreneurs to follow suit and to be able to have access to the opportunities that we did.
And I absolutely think you have, and I think your work is something that, like, um, really speaks to that in a very true way. The audience actually is interested to also know, like, in this journey you talked about, like, using those words, those transparent walls, as fuel to keep going in your mission. Was there any mistake that you made along in your journey,
Oh, of course. There's
or
always
biggest mistake, I'd say?
yeah, I was gonna
Yeah.
say, like, the tons of mistakes. Um, one in particular, you know what? It's so hard. Like, I've definitely been reflecting on this for a few years, and
Hmm.
um, I've had a few executive coaches that have kind of helped me navigate through the pain that comes with leaving your company.
Yep.
'Cause it is in very many ways, it's kind of like your child, right? And it's hard, and, um, part of that reflection has been around, truthfully, this perception as an entrepreneur that you have to control everything, um, and I think that was probably one of the biggest lessons that I took away from that experience is that you can't actually control everything, and the more you try, the harder you're gonna fall. It took me a very long time to realize that. I was trying to think of, gosh, like why was that journey so difficult? Why do I still feel so guilty that we didn't
Mm,
have the success that we thought? We were able to sell to local investors and all of that, but in my mind, we had such a bigger mission and vision to fulfill. And I think that's one of the biggest, I don't want to necessarily call it a mistake because I wouldn't have learned from it, but biggest learnings is as an entrepreneur, it's very, very easy to take on all of that weight and put it on your shoulders. Um, and some of it deserves to be there, so don't get me wrong. Uh, but this pressure of the control aspect of like I need to control everything that happens
mm,
is really not real. It's something that, at least for me, like I felt like I made up in my own head. And it made the fall feel that much harder um, because of all the pressure that we had put on ourselves. I think too, like especially given the business that we were running, right? Like I was interpreting, you know, any type of failure as we've let our team down, we've let our customers down, um, we've let women down because we're creating a product for them to help support. and really help them get out of situations around sexual assault. Like that was just like a heavy weight to carry. Um, and I do wonder if I look back or if I could do it all over again. I think there's definitely an element of responsibility and like controlling what you can control, but letting go of the things you can't. 'Cause it was those pieces that really ate up at my own mental health and physical health, um, that I'm still recovering from, right? It's kind of like the company will, comes and goes, but you as an individual continue to live and exist. And it's really important to take care of yourself, especially as givers, right? Especially as people who are putting in so much into a company, giving yourself some grace and prioritizing yourself. I would 100% do that differently the next time around.
And uh, I mean, the audience is really interesting to like is interested to know the advice that you kind of gained from those experiences. Like, how did you pick yourself back up, and keep striving towards your life's ambition and striving towards the work that you spent so many years towards. Like after that, a lot of our
Yeah.
entrepreneurs are solo entrepreneurs or freelancers. Like they are their businesses. They may not have teams or larger people to lean on. Like so, maybe your advice could help them if they experience similar things.
Yeah, definitely. I think one thing that you just said there is the reality of how lonely entrepreneurship can be. Even though I had a co-founder, it was still lonely at times, right? My advice would be, and something that we did is just because you don't have a team, which I understand most people don't, right? You're kind of doing your own solo thing, which is great. But find a community of people who understand what you're going through. Um, for me, I was again very fortunate to have a few entrepreneurs that were close friends of mine who actually understood what I was going through. My husband, on the other hand, great supporter, but he didn't get it, right? Like, not really in my shoes. And so having that support system is great, but having people around you who understand what you're going through as an entrepreneur is really, really important. And like I was saying earlier, there are more of those communities that exist. And so being able to plug into those will make you feel less lonely, I hope. Um, and we'll be able to provide you that community and peer support, which is so important, because it is challenging, right? Like, and it does feel really lonely, and it feels so massive when you can't make payroll, or it feels really insane when you're trying to get a customer to pay for something and you can't get the deal closed, right? Like
Mm.
those kinds of realities, other people, I guarantee you, have been through them, and it's just nice to be able to talk to someone. So that would be my first advice, is like really finding your people, who can support you, like whether it's a CEO roundtable or even this group, right? The group that you all have created here is a great place to start. Um, and I think that the second piece that I would kind of call out is making time for yourself. And I love strategy. I'm the first person to say, like, we need goals, we need to have a way to get there. What's the plan? Create those same types of goals and plans for you. I know that sounds a little bit silly. You're like, "Oh my gosh, I can barely get my, 12-month plan for my business. How am I supposed to do that for myself?" But just try and do it. Because you are a key element of your organization, and without you, the organization could cease to exist. Right? And so that's a big way of prioritizing yourself, is actually creating a plan. Like, what are you gonna do for self-care every day? What goals are you gonna set for yourself every quarter? To make sure that you're taking care of you so that you can show up to your organization and your business as your best self, because that's gonna make your business successful. Um, and so the 2 very much are tied together. So if there were 2 takeaways, I think those would be the 2.
Well, Andrea, I want to thank you so much again. Like the crowd is thoroughly and engaged and inspired, especially in the new year. Like I think this is advice that rings true after people have taken breaks, taken the time to think about like where they want to do in the new year, reflect on the past year. I think your advice, your words ring so true. So again, I want to say thank you so much for taking the time out to give your advice to this community here today. And once you see the chat after the call, you're gonna roll over.
I know,
People
I'm
are super
excited. I
excited.
don't know what's going on in there.
People are
I
super
told
excited.
Lyndon I wouldn't mess around with it because I'm scared I would somehow disappear. But no, this was great. I'm here. I'm also available, and a lot of people don't take me up on it, but reach out to me on LinkedIn or email me anytime. It's Andrea@uncharted.org. I'm happy to just chat. I'm happy to be a sounding board for anything. If you have any questions, if you have any interest in connecting with anyone that I might know, reach out.
Thank you. And I will say Andrea is serious about her work. She's an amazing person. She's an amazing contact to have. So
Yeah, I
Andrea,
do
thank
mean
you
it,
again.
right?
Yeah.
Lyndon reached out
No,
to
no,
me,
no.
and
She
here
means
we
it.
are
She
2
means it
years
so
later.
much.
So,
She means it. And 2 years later, she means it. Well, thank you so much, Andrea.
all right, yeah, thanks everyone. Really great to be here, and happy New Year.
If you'd like to join the Accelerate Collective and attend future campfires, visit accelerateamerica.com/join and check out our future guest at accelerateamerica.com/campfire. Take care.